hot topic that's been debated. Has been debated over and over again in Israeli society and Israeli politics. Things really are starting to get out of hand and out of control in this debate, to the point where it looks like they may break up the government over this dispute, and even the Beit Knesset of the chief rabbi Yitzhak Yosef was attacked and burnt, most likely on the basis of this dispute, which is, as a Jewish religious society, do we need to be supporting people studying Torah, exempting them from participating in the workforce, exempting them from participating in the military, and basically what they called nisya banetel, or do they need to also give a hand along with the rest of society in working and at least providing for themselves, and also participating in the communal national obligations to protect our country. Okay, so the Haredi standpoint, the Haredim, they say, no, we need to be supported. People who study Torah, they should be exempt from everything. And we'll see what they base that on. And basically everybody else says, no. The religious people, the non-religious people, called the religious Zionists at least, or more modern, what they call modern Orthodox, they say, no, you should be working like everyone else, and you should be participating in the military like everyone else. So let's see, what does the Torah have to say? I'm mostly bringing, again, Maimonides' point of view, which, in my view, reflects most honestly or most loyally the view of the Chachamim, the view of our tradition. And we'll discuss what others have to say about it as well. All right, so let me share my screen. I have a source sheet here. Okay, everyone could see it well. Okay. All right. Okay, so there's actually a third part of the discussion, and that's also should subjects such as English and science and mathematics be taught in all schools, including the Haredi schools, or the Haredim say, no, we just want to focus on studying Torah and nothing else. Okay, so we're actually going to start with this. It says there's a mitzvah. We have a mitzvah. We say it in the Shema every single day, twice a day at least. And it's also on our mezuzot. Every time we pass by the mezuzah and we kiss the mezuzah, we're kissing this pasuk. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha. Right? And you must love God, right? Adonai, your God. B'chol levavecha, with all your heart, u'b'chol nafshecha, with all your spirit, u'b'chol me'odecha, with everything you have. All right? So ve'ahavta, you saw in one of our previous courses, ve'ahavta, there's a mitzvah of loving God. Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha. B'chol levavecha, what does levavecha mean? By the way, lev, usually in the Tanakh and in the Hachamim's terminology, lev refers to your mind. All right? Uvchol nafshecha is with your whole soul. Uvchol me'odecha. And the Hachamim say, afilu notel et nafshecha, even to the point where you may need to risk your life to the point of sanctifying God's name. And we'll get to that later on when we discuss military service. All right, but what is this mitzvah of ahava, of loving God? In Chod Yesodei HaTorah, the second chapter, it says, Ha'er ha'gadol ve'hanora hazeh mitzvah le'ahavo u'nira imeno. There's a positive mitzvah to love God and brings this pasuk, Ve'avta et Adonai Elohecha. It says, Ve'he'achi haderech le'ahavato v'yira'ato. And what is the way to acquire this love of God? It says, B'sha'a she'yitbonen ha'adam b'ma'asav uvru'av hanifla'im hagedolim. This happens when you study the creation of God. Yitbonen b'ma'asav, to see what did God do. Try to understand. Yitbonen is from the word lehavin. And it's not just as someone once tried to argue with me, says Yitbonen is just to enjoy the sunset, to enjoy, to look at the beauty of the sunset at the beach, or to see, a rainbow in the cloud. And I really recommend going back to that lesson where we studied this mitzvah, and I showed that unless you really understand the science behind the rainbow, you don't even know what you're looking at when you're looking at a rainbow. All right, so I recommend going back to that. But the word yitbonen doesn't just mean to look, to observe. It means to understand, to study. B'ma'asav uvru'av hanifla'im hagedolim. It says, Ve'yireh mehem chokhmato, and he sees from this study the great wisdom in God's creation, which doesn't happen just by looking and enjoying a sunset. It's by understanding how light interacts with the atmosphere, or how it interacts with water. It's understanding how the world works when you really get an appreciation for God's wisdom in creation. Right? When you see that there is no bound, there is no limit to God's wisdom in this world, miyad hu ohev, then he comes to this point of love of God, umishabeach, and he praises God, umfa'er, umitaveh te'ava gedola lidah et Hashem hagadol. And he has this great inclination to know and to come closer to God. That is the mitzvah of ahava. And that mitzvah comes from learning, from studying, not just studying sugiyot in the Talmud, but from studying how the world works. Okay, so do we need to be learning limudei liba? By the way, limudei liba, what they say, core things, core sciences, is they're not even talking about going into deep sciences, just the basis for someone to be able to get a job afterwards, or to go to university and learn some trade, learning English to get around in the world. The whole global business world today is in English. Learn that, learn basic mathematics. We're not even talking about all this yet. So yes, of course, all schools should have these core studies, and really, right, if you really care about the Torah and studying Torah and getting to love God properly, then you should have advanced sciences as well, part of the curriculum. All right, and now let's see. הלכות תשובה, דבר ידוע וברור שאין אהבת הקדוש ברוך הוא נכשלת בליבו של אדם עד שישגה בה תמיד כראוי. So the only time love of God, ahava, really gets part of your neshama is when you're always thinking about God, when you're always pondering, meditating on these new ideas that you're learning, on these when you're at the cutting edge of science. And you forget about everything else in the world apart from studying the wisdom of God. As it says, bechol levavecha uvchol nafshecha. Right? That's the meaning of with all your soul and with all your spirit, right? Is to always be attached to God in your mind. This is only in the knowledge and the wisdom that you acquire of God. In accordance to your knowledge is your love for God. Right? If you only have a little, then you only really love him a little. Ve'im harbe harbe. And if you study a lot and you ponder a lot, meditate a lot on this, then you have a lot of this ahava. Lefichach, therefore, tzarich adam liyached asmo להבין ולהשכיל בחוכמות ותבונות המודיעין לו את קונו. It says, therefore, a person needs to sanctify himself, to separate himself, and focus on studying chokhmot, wisdoms, tvunot. Tvunot is logic, everything, hamodi'in lo et kono, that teaches you more about your Creator. כפי כוח שיש באדם להבין ולהשיג, as much as you have the capacity to understand and to learn about God. כמו שביארנו בהלכות יסודי התורה, as we already mentioned in Hilchot Yesodei HaTorah, the second chapter, what we read before. This, by the way, this halakha over here is the last halakha in Sefer Hamada, in the first of his 14 books on halakha. Why am I pointing this out? We're going to read, by the way, another last halakha of a book, of one of the 14 books, is because the Rambam, he has this custom to finish his books with something more inspirational, not necessarily a halakha, like do this, don't do this, but basically Sefer Hamada literally means the book of knowledge. It opens up with Hilchot Yesodei HaTorah, the fundamentals of the Torah. The second chapter talks about love of God. And now when he's closing the book of knowledge, he wants to remind you that the best way to get closer to God is to study God's wisdom, to study his creation. Okay? And that's how he closes and concludes the book of knowledge. All right, so that's regarding studying sciences, what people like to refer to as secular knowledge or secular sciences. By the way, in according to the Hachamim, there's no such thing as secular sciences. There's just science. Anything you study, philosophy, science, biology, astronomy, it's all part of science, the wisdom of God. There is no separation between Kodesh and Chol when it comes to acquiring an education. Okay? All education is Kodesh. Yafeh Talmud Torah im derech eres. Right? This is in Masechet Avot. Talmud Torah goes very, very well with something called derech eretz. What is derech eretz?
Midot.
Sorry?
Is it midot?
Midot, okay. That's how most people interpret it. But look at what it says now. Sheyigiat shenehem, by toiling in both, mishakahat avon, makes you too tired to do any kind of sin, transgression. So what is derech eretz? Derech eretz, which many times is referred to as midot, good midot. It's a short in terms, kederech kol haaretz, the way of the people. All right. So in some context, it really refers to as good midot. Why? Because we say, well, why is an am haaretz called an am haaretz? A simple person and not a wise person is called an am haaretz, one of the nations, because they have good midot. Most people will say, what's the word? Savir midot. Maybe they're not extra righteous, but they're sufficient. They're sufficient to have a good community. Most people, right? Most people also. It talks about the practice of most people. Most people also, they work. They go to work. All right, so when you toil at work, you have a hard day of work, and then you come home, and you toil and study Torah. At the end of the day, you're wiped out, and you have no time, and you have no energy to transgress any of the mitzvot. All right, you're not all of a sudden going to go out. Oh, let's go to a pub and get drunk and get into a bar fight. No, no, you have no energy for any of that. You're too busy at work and you're too busy studying Torah. All right. So derech ba'alei de'ah. All right. So let's see. Regarding working, it says derech ba'alei de'ah. It says reasonable people. This is their practice. Shigbalu adam melacha hamefarneset oto techina. His first thing that he's worried about, concerned about, is acquiring a trade, something that he can make a living from. Ve'achar kach yikne bet dira. And afterwards, once he has a trade and a profession and he could start making a living, he can buy a house or find a place to live. And afterwards, once he has a trade and he has a place to live, he can marry a woman and bring her into his house. Shene'emar, as it says, Mi ha'ish asher nata kerem ve'lo hinelo. Says, who is the person who's talking about people who are exempt from going out to war, right? We'll actually get into this later on when we talk about the laws of war. But people who are exempt from participating, at least in some types of wars. Mi ha'ish, who is the person who set a field, right? He planted a field, ve'lo hinelo, he didn't consecrate it yet. All right. So first he's worrying about his trade. Mi ha'ish, this is the next type of person who's exempt. Asher bana bayit hadash ve'lo hanacho, who built a new house and didn't inaugurate it yet. It says mi ha'ish asher eras isha ve'lo lekaha. And then who is the person who engaged a woman to get married and he didn't marry her yet? All right. So first is a person works about his paranasa, right? He sowed a field, and then a person who built a house, and then a person who marries a woman. It says avala tipashim. However, the less intelligent people, mathanim nisa isha, first they get married, ve'achar kach im timtza yado yikne bayit, and then if he manages to put a few pennies together, maybe he'll find a place to live. ואחר כך, בסוף ימיו, and then at the end, יבקש מלאכה, he will try to acquire some sort of trade in order to make a living, או יתפרנס מן הצדקה, or he will make a living from gathering charity from people. It says, גדול המעלה, and the highest level of a person's integrity, somebody who doesn't collect charity for himself, it means at all, even if he's poor, even though he needs it. But he takes up an extra shift, he works a little extra, he finds some other job he can do, or he cuts down on things that he doesn't need in order to be able to live without asking anybody for help, financial help. And regarding this, Baruch HaGever Asher Yiftach B'Adonai. This is, blessed is the person who relies only on God and not on other people. And the Chachamim added to this verse, he says, the Chachamim said, you should do this to the point where even if you can't honor the Shabbat with extra, wine or meat or something, then just do Shabbat as if you do any regular day. Just, I don't know, a little bit of rice or pasta, what's the cheapest food you can find, and don't ask anybody for charity. All right? And on this it says, Ashrei HaGever Asher Yiftach B'Adonai, right? It says, happy is the person who relies, has bitachon, faith on God, V'haya Adonai Miftacho, and God himself only is who he relies on. All right? So that's regarding going to work? In what cases are you allowed to ask the public to support you? There is no case that allows it. Or to deliberately make yourself supported by the public, that's asur. The Chachamim are saying, even if you're poor and you're working and you're having a hard time, I said, then you can ask for charity. But don't, it's not a virtue to go and ask people to support you. So, it says, of Sefer but after they're coming close to the land of Israel, and they're fighting Og Melech Bashan, right, and Sihon, and Reuven wants that land for their tribe, and they don't want to enter into Eretz Yisrael. They say, wow, this is great grazing land over here, right? We'll be happy with what we have over here. Well, this portion over here, and don't give us a portion in on the other side of the Jordan. And Moshe says to them, he says, your brothers are going to go out to war, and you're going to be sitting here. It says, so there's two types of wars. There's a milchemet misvah, a war that is prescribed by the Torah, that we have to participate in, we have to go out to war. And there is an optional war. If the king wants to increase the borders, right? We've already conquered the entire land. We're sitting peacefully, and there's a lot of great oil in Kuwait. And he decides, you know what, let's go conquer Kuwait and take their oil. The king is allowed to do that. He needs the Supreme Court's permission for it. But he's allowed to go out to this optional war. But what is a milchemet misvah? A war that we have to participate in, we have to go out. Zo milchemet shiva amamin, right? This is the war of the 7 nations that reside within the land of Israel, because conquering the land of Israel is a mitzvah. Umilchemet Amalek, we're fighting a war against Amalek, which in my opinion are our friendly neighbors all over the West Bank and Gaza. I think they are Amalek, but let's say they're not. Ve'ezrat Yisrael miyad sar sheba alehim, and the protection of any Jewish community that has an enemy that's coming to fight them. So to go into a defensive war of any Jewish community is a milchemet misvah. Nobody is exempt from that. And we see in the 7th chapter, it says, when in the optional war, there are certain people who are exempt from going out to war. Who are those people who are exempt from going out to war? It's what we saw before, someone who sowed a field and didn't get to reap it yet, someone who built a house and didn't get to inaugurate it. These 3 people are exempt from the optional war. However, in the milchemet misvah, b'amei devarim amurim shemachzirim anashim, these people, when do we call them? When do we say send them home and don't participate in the war? B'milchemet hareshut, only in the optional war. Aval b'milchemet misvah, in any one of these 3 circumstances where you need to conquer the land or protect the Jewish people from an enemy, everybody goes out to this war. Nobody is exempt from participating in this war. Even the hatan, right, the groom, he just got married or he's just about to get married. By the way, a married couple, for the first year, he's exempt from participating in the optional war. But let's say they just got married, even he just got married from the chuppah, they send him right to the war. to the front line if needed. V'chala, and even the bride, not just the groom, the bride too, she goes to participate in the war. Not in the front line, but in helping setting up the base or whatever it is they need. So who's exempt from going out to war? Was of milhamet misvah? Nobody's exempt from the war. Everybody has to participate. All right? Any questions so far? Is that a question? Rebecca, I see you raising your hand. No, okay. She's just pretending.
Thank you, sorry.
Okay, so is everything clear up until now? Okay. Now, let's see. Elu, in Perek Helek, the Mishnah starts, and this is how we start almost every time we study Mishnah, we start with this Mishnah. Kol Yisrael yishlem helek le'olam haba. All of the Jewish people have a portion in the world to come, right? Even if someone sins, he still has a portion in the world to come, right? And then it goes into elu she'en lahem helek le'olam. However, these people, these certain types of people, have no portion in the world to come. So let's see. Who are these people? L'chot teshuvah. Ve'elu she'en lahem helek le'olam haba. The people who have no portion in the world to come, ela nichratin ve'ovdin. They're cut off from the eternal life, and when they die like a dog or like any other animal that has no afterlife. Ve'nidonin al godel rish'am ve'hatatam, and they're judged for the greatness of their iniquities, of their sins. Le'olam ulolme olamim, forever and ever and ever. Who are these people? It says haminim ve'apikoresim ve'kufrim b'Torah. People who reject the Torah, people who deny God's existence altogether, and because of a few other types of people, umachti'eh harabim, and people who cause the public to sin, to transgress the Torah, ve'hapurshim midarkei sibur, and the people who leave, right, the national, the communal obligations and separate themselves from the community in a time of need. It says these are people who are cut off from Olam Haba. It says, what is Machti'eh Harabim? It says Machti'eh Harabim, Echad Shechdi Bedavar Gadol, someone who caused a great sin, people to transgress a mitzvah, Ki Yerovam L'Sadok Ubaitus, like Yerovam ben Nevat, who separated the kingdom and prevented people from going up to Yerushalayim, and he made a whole other temple in the northern kingdom, and Sadok Ubaitus, who completely rejected the Torah Shebe'al Peh. All right, so that's one type of Machti Harabim. V'chad shechti b'davar kal. And someone also who made people transgress a minor mitzvah. Afinu levatel mitzvat aseh. Says even if you made people or prevented people from performing a positive mitzvah, you didn't make them transgress the Torah, do something they're not allowed to do. You prevented them from doing something they have to do. So that's Machti'eh Harabim. So what about all these people who are instructing entire communities to not take part in the Milhamet Mitzvah? They are annulling a Mitzvah Deoraita of the Torah. These Machti'eh Harabim. They have no Chelek to Olam Haba. This is very, very serious. And Haporesh Midarkei Sibur. Who is Haporesh Midarkei Sibur? People who separate themselves from the yoke of the community. Afal pi shelo avar averot. Even if he didn't actually transgress any mitzvah, Elan nivdal me'adat Israel, but he separates himself from the rest of the community, the Jewish community. Ve'eno oseh mitzvot bichlalan, and he doesn't participate in the mitzvot with them. Ve'lo nichnas b'saratan, and he doesn't participate in the dangers, right, that are befalling us. So we have a war, we've been attacked, and we need to respond and we need to protect ourselves. No. We're not participating in that. That's a poresh midar kesibur. And those people, they have no portion in the world to come. So that's regarding those who absolve themselves from participating in the military for so-called religious reasons. When the Torah is very, very clear that we all need to participate in defending ourselves. Any questions so far?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, please.
So have you seen any rebuttals on these topics from the Haredi community or those in the Haredi community that are dissuading their community to participate in defending
We'll discuss what they base, what halakha they base this on.
Okay, thank you.
I'm going to bring it, it'll be a little bit further down. All right. Okay. So they say everybody needs to you need to make a living, right? But then some people say, okay, but that's everybody, and I'm studying Torah, and they say, you know what? My Torah is my profession. They say Toratan omanutan. Their Torah is their profession. And so they need to be paid for this amazing service that they're providing by studying Torah. I haven't understood the service yet. Okay, what does it say? Kol hamesim al libo. Anyone who decides she'asok b'Torah, that he's only going to be studying Torah, v'lo ya'aseh melacha, and he's not going to work, v'yitparnes min hatzedakah, and instead he's just going to collect charity in order to make a living. Harizeh hillel et Hashem ubiza et haTorah v'chibba me'or hadat v'garam ra'a le'asmo. Right, this person, he desecrated the name of God. Hillel et Hashem ubiza et haTorah, and he what's the word? Biza is to make it simple, to make it ugly. He made the Torah something ugly. V'chibba me'or hadat, and he extinguished the light of Judaism. V'garam ra'a le'asmo, and he brings the evil upon himself. V'natal hayav min ha'olam haba, and he cut himself off from the world to come. All right, we said the greatest sachar that you can get for doing the mitzvot is to get, to live in this eternal life in the world to come. The biggest punishment you can get is to be cut off from that life. It says anybody who makes the Torah his living and makes people support him for the sake of studying Torah, it's not just someone who doesn't want to work and collect charity, which we said that's not a good thing. It's not an issur. If a person is paying, comes by, you're sitting like a homeless person because you don't want to work or you can't work, and someone comes and gives you money, it's not a transgression. It's not asur. It's just not a right practice. It's a bad practice. However, if you do that for the sake of studying Torah, in that case, it becomes a huge transgression to the point where you are completely cut off from the world to come, from Olam Haba. Lefi she'asur lehenot b'divrei Torah ba'olam hazeh. It is forbidden to get any kind of material benefit from the Torah in this world. So if you do that, you're punished by being cut off from the eternal world. Ve'amru hachamim, and the hachamim said, Kol hanehene midivrei Torah, anybody who makes benefit, material benefit from the Torah, natal hayav min ha'olam, he cut himself off from the eternal life. Ve'od sivu ve'amru, and further they said, Al te'asem atara lidgadel bahem, says you should not turn the Torah in some sort of crown to grandiose yourself above others, to make people honor you. Velo kardom lahfor b'hem. You're not like a shovel that you can dig, and find treasures and become rich from. Ve'od sivu ve'amru, and also they further instructed, you should love labor, and you should hate having a position, rabbinic position above others. V'chol Torah she'en ima melacha, and any Torah that doesn't have any kind of work together with it. What we saw before, right? Says Yafet Talmud Torah in Derech Eretz, right? It's good to study Torah and also work. It says anybody who studies Torah and doesn't work, she'en ima melacha, that doesn't have some sort of job in order to support it, sofa betela, in the end this Torah is going to be cancelled. He's going to lose his Torah too. Sofa goreret avon, and it's going to cause him also to transgress the Torah. Shesofa damze sheyeh melastes taberiyot. In the end, this person has become a cheater. He's going to try to make these quick cash, be rich fast schemes and trick people out of their money. And he's going to be a criminal. He's going to be a crook. So if you have no way to support yourself, then your Torah is also in the end going to be going away, and you're likely to become a crook. All right, this is the Rambam quoting the Chachamim in the Mishnah. This lo ta'asem akara nitgadel bahem velo kardom lahfor bahem. This is Pirkei Avot. This is the Mishnah in Avot. If you want to see, you know what? Let me bring here the commentary. One second. Move this. Here we go. I'm just gonna go quickly through this this commentary to Avot. Says right, and there's hayam in ha'olam, that he's completely cut out from the world to come. Says hita'avetu bnei adam b'zeh halashon hanigle v'yishlichuhu achar gavam. Says I see that there are many people. This is already back in the days of the Rambam, right? This dispute isn't new to the modern state of Israel. Says whenever have a community with rabbis who want to themselves above and be supported by the public, says they just took this Mishnah and threw it away. And they took a few different statements of the Hachamim that they didn't understand them, and I'll explain them to you. It's true, there are rules that exempt Talmidei Hachamim from participating in certain things. It means they have certain tax breaks, but they're not. But it's not that the taxes need to support them. It's that if the city needs to raise money to build a wall, they exempt the Hachamim from it. Not the entire religious black hat community. The Talmidei Hachamim, the heads of the yeshivot, maybe. All right? Not an entire public. It's specific people, individuals. All right. So let's see. It says, Ukvar yadata. Says, and you should know, and you know, if you study the Talmud, you know. Hillel HaZaken haya chotev esim. He's going through some of the greatest Talmidei Hachamim. Says Hillel, says Shammai and Hillel HaZaken, he was a lumberjack. And he was one of the greatest Chachamim. He studied from the heads of the Sanhedrin. He himself was president of the Sanhedrin. But he worked every day as a lumberjack. And he was extremely poor. ומעלתו הייתה כאשר ידעת מתלמידיו אשר נמשלו כמשה ואהרון, הקטן של תלמידיו רבן יוחנן בן זכאי, the lowest of the youngest of his students was Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, who also became later president of the Sanhedrin. and he was the teacher of Rabbi Akiva, right? ואין ספק למסכין שינו היה מורה לאנשי דורו ליהנות מהם. And everyone knows, no dispute, that if he would have instructed his generation to support him, לא הם מניחים אותו לחטוב עצים. They wouldn't have let him be a lumberjack. They would have filled his pockets with riches. ורבי חנינא ben דוסה. All right, you know, there's a whole list here of the Chachamim and what they did, and I want to share with you a picture that someone once put together. Beautiful picture. Look at this. Anyone know what the yellow pages are? Yellow pages is up in the once upon a time, right? When I was young, they still had phone books, right? And in phone books, you had an area with all the professions in the area, professionals that you can go to. So someone put together here a yellow pages of Chachamim. And you see, you have over here, you have people who sew, tailors, right? Hayatim, says Abba ben Zimna, Daniel, Hanan, Rabbi Yehuda, right? You go here, you have Hillel Zaken, he was a lumberjack. Shammai, he was, he did shiputzim, he did renovations in your house. You have Maimonides here, who was a doctor. You have Shemuel, who was the student of Rabbi Yehuda Hanassi, right? He was an astronomer. He was also a doctor. You have Rabbi Hanina, he was a shoemaker, a sanad. Rabbi Oshaya too. You have Rashi, he had his own vineyard and he made wine. So you see all these Chachamim, everybody had a profession. Whether they were heads of the Sanhedrin, right? They sat in the Supreme Court. That was like a side hustle to sit in the Supreme Court of Israel. And on their day-to-day, they went to work either as a lumberjack or as a sabal. Rav Sheshat was sabal. He used to carry logs, move logs. He was a logger, moving them from one place to another. So you have Hillel Zaken cut down trees, and Rav Sheshat would carry logs to the city and sell them, right? Rav Adam Moded Karkal, he used to measure fields, right? If you're going to city planning, you need to see what the distance is from one place to another, how you're going to plan the city. So you go to Rav Adam, he could measure the city for you, or a street, or a field. So everybody had a profession. All of the greatest of the Chachamim. So, what argument do they like to raise when it comes to being exempt from the workforce? There's something called Sichar Batala. There is a concept called Sichar Batala, is payment for not working. What does that mean? And what is the question? This is Masechet Ketubot, the Talmud. Amarav is also one of the students of Hanassi. Kol dayan shenotel sachar ladun dinav betenin. Says that any judge who asks the people who come to him with a dispute or judgment, who asks them for a payment for sitting in judgment, dinav betenin. His judgments are rendered invalid. You have to go to another dayan. It's no good. Amar Rav Papa comes and he says, Sichar Batala Share. Says, however, if he asks for Sachar, for payment, because he's got a job now, he has a big job that he needs to do, he has a project, and he needs to work. However, we need you now to judge us. And he says, look, I'm going to be sitting in judgment for an hour. I'm losing money at my profession, at my job. I need the money to make a living. Says, in that case, you're allowed to charge them what you're losing out on by missing work. That's Sichar Batala. All right, look at the halacha. Asur ledayan litol sachar al hadim. A judge is not allowed to request payment for sitting in judgment. Ve'im lo haya lo ma yuchal. And if he has nothing to eat except for what he's going to be making now from his work, Then he could say, תנו לי שכר בטלה, כמו שאני בטל עם מלאכתי. He says, pay me what I'm losing out on by not working. But for that, by the way, you need to have a profession. If you're unqualified in any profession, then say your sechar batala is the minimum wage. And if in this case, where he only charged them for the work that he's missing, in this case, his judgments aren't rendered invalid. They're acceptable. All right? It's still not preferable. However, if this is the case where in order to make a living, he needs them to compensate him for the work that he's losing, in that case, then his judgments are still acceptable. Okay, but this doesn't apply to Torah, to studying and teaching Torah. And even when people say, oh, but we need teachers to teach Torah, and in that case, they should be receiving some sort of payment, you know what? Okay, let's take it that step far. But studying Torah, to receive payment for sitting and studying Torah, not teaching Torah, studying Torah, that's unheard of. There is no place in the Mishnah, in the Talmud, in the Midrashim, any place where that's a basis for that argument. The closest thing you have is Sechar B'Tala, and over here it's not even teaching, it's about giving a service. Two people have a dispute, you need to make shalom between them. You're supposed to do it for free. If you can't do it for free because you need to work and they insist on you doing it, then you can charge them for the time that you're losing at work. All right? This we covered.
I have another question.
Yes.
How did it start with students, the Torah students, like students just studying Talmud? Like, how did that start? That people did not have the study or the being a dayan as they went from having that as a side hustle to having that as their primary occupation.
I think,
you know?
I seriously think, and this seems to be what Maimonides is also suggesting, that it's more an issue of politics. They want to be heads of a community and they want the community to support them, as opposed to being hachamim by virtue of their wisdom. They want to be supported by the public and not need to work. And we see, right, whether you agree with the technicality of the halakha, whether it's mutar or asur, what does the Rambam say here? He says anyone who does this says Harei ze chilel et Hashem. He's dissipating the name of God. He's causing a Chilul Hashem. Whether you agree with the technicality of the halakha or not, just look at what's going on in this country, and you'll see what a great Chilul Hashem is being caused by this. You have an entire segment of society that's hated by the rest of the people because they feel that they're supporting something that they don't want to be supporting. Because here it's not even, we're not even talking about now a case where, some rich benefactor comes and says, I want to support you. We're not even talking about like supporting an institute necessarily. Like Pnei Or has a lot of students, it has teachers, it has expenses, right? It has operational expenses, and someone wants to donate money because we believe in the way of studying Torah and Pnei Or to keep the things going. He says, no, let's say someone comes and says, I want to support you to study Torah. You specifically don't work, just sit down and study all day. He says that is a Chilul Hashem. There are cases where in that case, it is, it could be acceptable. Well, where it could be acceptable in certain cases, but what we have now is people are paying they're paying tax money that they're not interested in. And these people, they don't want to work. They don't want to serve in the army. They don't want to participate with the public, to the point now where they say if they're going to draft them to the army, they're going to break up the government on that in the middle of war. And who knows what's going to happen.
Okay, so this if we don't look at the being substituted by the government, so it was a thing even during the time of Rambam, that people would, instead of having an occupation, a so-called secular occupation.
It says, right? It says, it says, everything that's happened is what's going to continue happening. Right? There's nothing new in this world. All our disputes, they've been going on for generations and hundreds of years and thousands of years. The only difference is that now that we actually have a state, and it's and this is causing a real big mahloket, a dispute among the nation. So where did these people get this idea from? Your previous question. This is going to be our last source here for the day. They bring the last halacha in Sefer Zeraim, the book where it deals with Shemitah and Yovel. The last halacha there says, "Velama lo zacha Levi benahalat Eretz Yisrael ubibizata im ehav." Says the tribe of Levi, the Levites, they don't get a portion in the country. Why? Mipnei shehuvdal la'avod et Hashem u'shareto. Because the Levites were signified, they were taken apart from the rest of the nation in order to worship God, whether it's in the Mikdash, the Kohanim, part of the Levites, work in the Mikdash, ulhorot derachav, and to teach God's ways, to teach the Torah, derachav ha'isharim, umishpatav ha'sadikim, and the laws, the righteous laws of the Torah to the public. So therefore, Levi was in the Torah, was separated, and they were granted this job. And also, as a part of that, they don't get part of the land, right? When the land was divided between the tribes, Levi didn't get any portion, right? And also when the nation goes out to war and conquers new lands, and brings in loot, they don't get any part of that. They don't get any share in the loot. Shneimar, as it says, Yoru mishpatecha liYaakov, right? You shall instruct the laws, his laws, God's laws, to Jacob, the Torah techa, and the Torah leIsrael, to the entire nation of Israel. Lefichach uvdelu midarkei ha'olam. That's why they were separated from the rest of the ways of the world. I say like Darkei Ha'olam, he is kind of like, can understand like Derech Eretz. Lo orchin milchama kishar Yisrael. They don't participate in war as the rest of the nation. By the way, they do some of the greatest generals, talking about even in ancient, anyone here of Josephus? He was the commander of the Galilee during the times of the revolt against the Romans. Josephus was a Kohen. Many of the generals were Kohanim and Levim. It says, they don't need to participate in the preparations of war like the rest. And they don't get a portion of the land like everyone else. And there's a mitzvah, ever seen when the Kohanim go out to wash their hands before Birkat Kohanim? Some people go out to wash their hands for them. There's a mitzvah to serve the Kohanim and the Levim. All right? And then he says, but this is talking about Shevet Levi. And then he says, Velo Shevet Levi bilvad. And not only Shevet Levi. Ela kol ish ve'ish mikol ba'ei ha'olam. That anybody in the world, but not even Jew, kol ba'ei ha'olam, anybody in the world, whose spirit carries him, right? And he wants to give from himself, and he has a great intellect, and he wants to study, to stand before God and to separate himself from everyone else, to serve God, ul'ovdo l'di'ayet Hashem, and to worship Him intellectually, l'di'at, to acquire knowledge of God. V'halach yashar kemo she'asau ha'elohim, and he goes the righteous path. He behaves properly the way God created man. Ufarak me'al savaro all ahashbonot harabim asher bikeshu bnei ha'adam, and he lifted from himself the yoke of communal responsibilities, as most people request. Kodesh Kadashim. This person is now sanctified, not Kodesh Kadashim, holy of the holies. V'Hashem Halko v'Nachalato, and God becomes his portion, like the Leviim, Le'olam ul'olmei olamin, forever and ever. V'yizkenu ba'olam hazeh davar hamaspik lo, and he will merit in this world enough to sustain himself. All right, so how does that sound? This is the halacha that people who try to exempt themselves from working and from participating in the army use as a foundation for their entire life outlook. All right. Not to mention, Maimonides was he was a working person. He was a doctor to the Sultan, right? Rabbi Shimon Hanagid, one of the greatest of the Chachamim, he was a general of the Spanish army. Don Ishaq Barbanel, he was the chief treasurer, the finance minister of the Spanish Empire when it was at its greatest. Funded Columbus's voyages to the New World. All right. Some of the greatest Chachamim. So what's going on here? By the way, so this kind of seems to go against everything that Rambam was saying before. Natal Hayav min ha'olam. He's completely ripped off from Olam Haba. So how do we understand this halakha? So first of all, it's important to note, as I said before, this is the last halakha of Sefer Zira'im, one of the 14 books. And the Rambam always ends every one of those 14 books with something more inspirational. So he's trying to inspire you to study Torah, to get Keter Torah. It's not necessarily halakha lema'aseh. However, let's examine what he's actually saying here, because he's not saying any of the things that the Haredim are quoting from here in order to justify their outlook on life. It says anybody who wants to come close to God and focus only on studying Torah, right, he can do so. Ufarak me'al savaro all ha'cheshbonot harabim asher bikshu bnei adam. He says many people, they want to be famous, they want to be, great politicians, they want to be ministers, they want to be this, they want to be prime minister or president, right? This person says, I don't want any of that. I just want to study Torah. Says, Harezeh, this person need Kadesh, Kodesh, Kodashim. Says the only thing that, right, so what people are trying to say, this kind of person who only wants to study Torah is now becoming like the Leviim that don't need to participate in war. Says this halakha isn't saying that. It's saying that it's true, the Leviim are Kodesh Kodashim, and they were designated to study Torah and teach Torah, right? Anybody else can also be Holy of Holies, be Kodesh Kodashim, and study Torah and teach Torah, right? If he's built for it. Doesn't mean he's exempt from anything. Doesn't say anything here about him being exempt. It says, Ufarak me'al savaro, all aheshbonot harabim asher bikshu bnei ha'adam. Says all those things that people are looking for themselves, to great status. They want to be, I don't know, they want to be a mayor, they want to be CEO, they want to be some big businessman. He says, I don't want any of that. I just want to focus on studying Torah. It says this person is Nitkadesh Kodesh Kadashim, and God is this portion. Ve'iskelo ba'olam hazeh davar hamaspik lo. Doesn't exempt him from working either. It says, but he's just going to work enough to make a living and no more. Not to be a big businessman, not to travel the world. Says everyone wants to travel. I just want to study Torah. I says, fine, study Torah. Work just enough to support yourself and your family, if you have one. Just enough. Work just enough to support yourself and spend all the rest of your time and energy studying and teaching Torah. That's the person who is Nitkadesh Kodesh Kadashim. And under no circumstances should this person gather charity to support himself from others, because that's already going into Kol hanehene midivrei Torah natal hayav min ha'olam. If you try to get any sort of material financial benefit from Torah, then you're cut off from olam haba, and that is vitparnes min tzedakah. Right? If you want to study Torah and gather charity in order to, support yourself with other people's charity, in order to do so, right? This is a Chilul Hashem. Bizayed Torah. He desecrated the Torah. Kibba me'or hadat. He extinguished the light of the law of the Torah. V'garam ra'ala asmo. He brings evil upon himself. Ve'natal hayav min ha'olam haba. And he completely cut himself out from the world to come, the eternal life. And any questions?
Yes, I have a question.
Yes, please.
I wanted to ask if the laws like this only apply for men who would want to study Torah, or is it also a version for women if they want to study Torah, maybe?
Doesn't differentiate here between men and women. Anyone who wants to study Torah is welcome to study Torah.
Thank you.
As long as, they don't become a burden upon the public by doing so. That's the idea. If you turn, because think about it. If you become a burden on the public because you want to study Torah, you're turning the Torah into a burden on the public. The Torah is meant to elevate the public. It's meant to guide them. It's meant to lead them. It's not meant to be a burden on them. It's not meant to be something, I have to do this. I just want to take my money. Anything else?
No, thank you so much. To be beneficial. Thank you.
Yes.
Sami, I have a very quick question.
Please.
First of all, thank you for bringing this very important topic up in class. It was very, very informative. Thank you for that. And my question is just a small question is, what was the name of the Rahamim who was supporting himself by being a lumberjack?
Oh, Hillel. He was a lumberjack. I sent this picture to Bracha so she could send it to you guys in the group.
Okay, great.
So just a nice thing. Shammai, you see, he did renovations, right?
I have
Everyone knows Rabbeinu Huniyam ben Akkana, Hofer Borot. His job was digging wells.
Wow.
Rish Lakish, also one of the great Hachamim, Shomer Pardesim. He was guard. He used to guard people's fields so that thieves don't come and steal from people's property.
Very interesting. Thank you for that, Sami.
Pleasure.
Yeah, I have a
agree.
question
It's so
too.
interesting. Thank you.
Yes, please.
So what is the, like, if we don't go too deep into the single sources that maybe Haredi may bring, but what do they generally say? What is their argument that, because I've heard so far only like this very general argument of if we go to the army, we cannot live our religious life anymore as we now do. Is this like the main general argument, or is there
First of
some
all,
deeper?
that argument is a BS argument, right? I was in the army. I lived a religious life. What does that mean, a religious life? Right? A
That's why I
religious
added
life
how they do.
means following the mitzvot of the Torah. If you're not going to the army, then you're not following the mitzvot of the Torah, because that's one of the mitzvot. So then you're not leading a religious life. You're choosing the mitzvot that are suitable to you. So I was in the army, we prayed Shacharit every day, we prayed Mincha every day, right? We studied Torah also. When we had time to study Torah, we studied Torah, right? The one thing that they can complain about, or that maybe they used to be able to complain about, is mixed units, but they're not planning on putting them in mixed units.
So what is their argument? Like, I mean, I totally understand. I think also you can be a religious person going to the army. So what is their argument?
What do I think the real reason behind it is that they're going to be exposed to a whole other world that's outside the control of their Rosh Yeshiva. And they may end up leaving that world, which in my opinion is a very positive thing. So it's really about, in my opinion, it's really about control. Because these rabbis now control masses of hundreds of thousands of followers. And if all of a sudden this next generation is going to be going into the army, a lot of them are likely to leave that society. There's nothing in the army that really prevents them from following a religious lifestyle. A lot of people go into the army and they become more religious afterwards. By the way, there's no bigger mitzvah than pikuach nefesh and saving people's lives. Now, it's true, there are other ways you can do that. You can do that as a medic, you can do that. So fine, then do that. And they say, well, there's a lot of things, they do zakah, and, there's also really difficult jobs like picking up body parts and things and identifying corpses that most people don't want to do, that the Haredim, they do a lot of that. Fine, then do that. They have units for that in the army. Be part of it. Or do some sort of other service, even if it's not in the army, but some sort of service that deals with that. Fine, but to exempt the entire public from service it's not the way of the Torah.
Thank you.
Another question.
Yes, please.
First of all, I want to thank you for bringing up these points, and you did it in a very clear way. So I'm very thankful for that, and also bringing up their argument. So just a question: where do you think that the discussion is between the way that it is, where they don't go into the army and they don't have another profession than just studying Torah in a yeshiva, and going towards more of a place where, as you say, that all of the different sages have done, that they have a profession and then they study, or they are Rosh Yeshiva next to
let me a little bit elaborate. We'll go back not just to the army, but to just getting an education. All right?
Okay.
Historically, throughout all of history, education has been limited by tyrants, because once you get an education and once you open your mind, you need to live in a free society. There's always a risk of overthrowing the tyrant once the people are able to think for themselves, once people are able to get together and discuss ideas, right? So it's always been we'll call it a controlled political thing. Free societies are very big on education. Tyrannical societies are always trying to limit education. Go to look at the difference between South Korea and North Korea. The exact same people, right? One is a free society. The other one's a tyrannical society. The tyrannical society doesn't want their people to know anything. Not about the world, and not about any kind of even simple sciences. They don't want them to be able to communicate with the world. The Torah wants you to get an education as broad as possible. It wants to be a free people. It wants to say, Al tikri harut ela herut. Right? It says v'michtav michtav Elohim. Right? The letters of the 10 Commandments. It says harut al haluchot. They're engraved on the tablets. And the Chachamim say, don't read engraved harut ela herut, but freedom and liberty. And the Chachamim say on that, En lecha ben horin ela misha osek b'Torah. Only a free person. Who's a free person? Someone who studies Torah. Studying Torah means, we see in the broad sense, before it was limited to just Talmud, right? The broad sense is studying anything that allows you to understand your God and your Creator better. It says liberty comes from getting an education. And the opposite, right? Limiting education is only comes to serve the tyrant. Now, back to the army military service. I can try to, illustrate this with the story I had with one of my ex-wife's Haredi uncles. We were having a whole big discussion on serving in the army, and he says, no, you have to serve in the army of David HaMelech. Is this army, the military we have today, the military of David HaMelech? And I said to him, I explained to him, I says, what was the army of David HaMelech before David HaMelech joined that army? All right, so it's described in Sefer Shemuel, what went on over there. Right, you see Goliath standing in the valley of Elah, right? And the Jewish people are too afraid to fight this one person. They can't find one person to go up against him, right? And he's mehalef umegadef, and he's swearing, and he's humiliating the Jewish people. It says that was the army before David HaMelech. You want an army of David HaMelech? Then David HaMelech needs to go to the army. It says, you want there to be a religious army? Fine, join the army, it'll become religious. You know, I went when I was serving in the army, we were a small group of religious guys. We came to a new base. The people before us on the base weren't religious. We go to the kitchen. We don't know what they cooked in the kitchen. We don't know if the utensils and everything is kosher. What do? We kosher the kitchen. You want a religious base, you want a kosher base, go there and make it kosher, and you'll have a kosher base. By the way, the army, the big bases, they're very, very strict on kashrut, right? It's horrible, really, it's horrible. For someone who's a little bit, you know, you go there on Pesach, there's nothing to eat. You can't even bring kitniot. Like 80% of this country, you know, of the religious people, observant people, the Sephardim. Well, why can't we have rice on Pesach in the army? No, it's eggs and potatoes. That's all we can eat. So for 1 week every year, if you're in the army, you're Ashkenazi.
So there's some things to change in the army as well, then.
To make it more lenient, you're saying?
No, to make it more representative of the country.
Yeah, but look, when you're serving on a base, like the base that we kosher the kitchen, it's a small base. There's like, what, 20 people on the base. It's a post. It's a post holding up a place. Who manages the kitchen? The soldiers that are there. What do they make for breakfast, lunch, and dinner? They make whatever they want. They get supply comes in. Supply trucks come in, right? They have a fridge. They have a supply room. They put, you know, hamburgers in one section and cheese in one section and whatever, choco and milk in one section and whatever. But, you know, when they come to cook, they'll cook whatever they want. If they want a cheeseburger, they'll make a cheeseburger. If there's no one religious there, they're going to do what they want. Join the army as a religious person, it's not going to happen. You want a religious army, have more religious people in the army. That's it. That's the only way it's going to happen. Any other questions?
I have a question.
Please.
And it's like we have 12 tribes. So only like a Levi or several the tribes, they only learn Torah, like a Levi.
I missed the first part of the question. Could you repeat?
No, I haven't questioned yet. It's like we have 12 tribes. We have 12 tribes. Not every tribes they only learn Torah. Like a Levi, they only learn Torah. Maybe Kohen, they only do this kind of thing. So we also have the tribes to like music, also like political something, like do business to make money, something like that. So how about they can, and I also learn about like if the person doesn't have the talent to do this kind of job, they like 3 years after or 5 years after, they need to change another another job, something like that. So I also learned about like if the person doesn't have the talent to learn Torah, like 5 years doesn't learn very good, doesn't have the talent.
If there's a Levi who doesn't have the talent, doesn't have the mind to study Torah.
No, I mean like nowadays, so a lot of the religion people, they say, I'm only learn Torah, something like that. But actually, maybe they don't have talent to learn Torah. They need to go to work. They need to go to do business. They need to go to support the family, whatever.
Right. So
whether
they have talent or not, the idea is whether they have a talent to study in Torah or not, they're not exempt from any of the public service. They're not exempt from working. It says even if you want to say, ish Torato umanuto, someone who's so great in the Torah, so such a special mind, and you can exempt him from taxes and stuff. First of all, even he really has to work and to support himself. But even then, it's only talking about individuals, like 1 out of 1,000 people who has that a genius mind to sit down and study Torah and really really generate pearls out of the Torah to on a much higher level than everyone else. And even then, his responsibility is to teach the Torah, not to study the Torah, to teach it. And how much of this Torah is being taught of all these hundreds of thousands of people? It mostly stays within their yeshivot.
Yes, but it's a different kind of thing. The teaching Torah is kind of job. Yes, this is relevant with Torah. It's relevant with Torah. But some kind of person, maybe they're no talent. They need to do something else, do hard work or whatever. But they say, I just want to learn Torah, so they only stay to learn Torah. They don't do what they should do.
So they're cheating.
It's that kind of situation in this country.
I think there's a lot of that, but
even
if all of them do have the head for studying Torah, they're still not exempt from it, from working.
Yeah. I mean, it's like for the Jewish people, whatever woman and a man, actually every day we should learn Torah. But we also need to work. This is our basic life. Like we need to drink water. But some like a Levi,
that's everybody. Everybody needs to study Torah, and everybody needs to work.
Yes. Anybody needs to work. Anybody need to learn Torah. But like a Levi, they can only learn Torah. But some people they need to
also work. But they do get special. They get maaser. They get if you go and you collect fruits from the tree, you need to give the Kohanim 10% and the Levim 1%, 10% of the 10%.
Yeah, this is relevant with the kind of serves Hashem, this kind of like a spiritual whatever. No, it's not like a mundane job. Okay, my question just like the people, they need to go to work, but they don't want to go to work, and then they go to learn Torah. That's it.
Right. I think a lot of people really, they're not built for it at that level anyways.
No, Sami, but Levi'im are supposed to teach the people, like in the past when they had to debate them, they would go
they teach the people to instruct, to teach.
Yeah, they instruct.
Oh, my question is like I don't say Levi. Levi, they should only learn Torah, but the person who doesn't have talent, they need to do the work, but they stay and say, I only learn Torah. This kind of person shouldn't to teach, because they have talent to learn Torah. So how they to go to teach?
Whether they have, thing is, whether they have talent or not, they have to work, right? If they don't have talent to study or talent to teach, right? It's a special talent to teach. Not everyone has it. Then they still have to work, no matter what.
Yeah, they still to have to work. But if someone learn Torah very well, they shouldn't go to work because it's a waste of time, because they have the talent to study Torah. I just my question
That's
is
great.
like,
That's what they have Shabbat for, to study Torah and not work. But the rest of the week, they have to work and make time to study Torah, but not study Torah to the point where you become like a weight on the public, where people have to support you so that you can study Torah. That's not right. That's asur.
okay. What is sut mean?
Sorry, asur means in Arabic haram, means forbidden.
Oh, forbidden. Oh, to that.
It's an avera. It's a transgression.
I heard this on Shabbat.
On Shabbat, you can study Torah and not work.
Yes, of course. Yes.
In fact, the Chachamim, they say, "Lo nitnu Shabbatot v'yamim tovim Yisrael ila la'asok bahem b'divrei Torah." It says the whole purpose that we receive Shabbat and holidays is so that you have a day where you don't work and study Torah. That's really the purpose of Shabbat and the holidays, is to maximize your time in studying Torah on those days.
For that.
Any other questions? Anyone else?
Yeah, I had a question. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Actually, two questions. The first question is, someone said to me, a Haredi person was saying that another reason that they don't go to the army is because they want to have kids, so they have a legacy before they go to the army. So I wanted to know your opinion on that. And then secondly,
I think that's very selfish, because we all want to have kids and have a legacy. Why should they be the only ones to be able to push off the army? And by the way, it's a BS argument, because then they just have kids and then go to the army. But then say, no, but I have little kids and I don't want to go to the army. I need to raise the kids and teach them Torah. If you're looking for excuses, you could always invent excuses. There is no basis in halakha for that argument, and so it's a non-argument. Where in the Torah does it say? It says, we saw the halakha. It says when there's milchemet mizbah, then even a groom right out of the chuppah goes to serve. Doesn't say anything about, and even in the exemptions, by the way, the exemptions for milchemet reshut, for an optional war, right? Even if it's an optional war, there's no exemption for you didn't have a kid yet. The exemption is if you got engaged and didn't get married yet, not if you didn't have a kid yet. So they can say that. That's a matter of their own personal desire, that they don't want to serve because they want to have kids first. But there's no basis for that in halakha.
thanks for clarifying. And also,
I don't want to serve until I become a millionaire. It's important I become a millionaire first. So I'm going to push off my service until I become a millionaire. Of course, when I become a millionaire, I'm going to have many, many employees that are under me that I need to take care of. So I can't serve because I'm a millionaire.
it doesn't sound good. My second question is, because I see all the men who are dying, and I actually start to feel a bit angry at the Haredim. And so I'm wondering if you have any tips for overcoming that.
If you find tips to overcome that, please share them with me.
Oh, okay.
Can I add additional
By the way, I'm
question
holding
regarding
myself.
army?
You know, Bracha and my wife, who know me well, they know I'm holding myself back a lot in this class. So,
Can I
who's
add more
next?
question regarding army?
Yes.
I'm all for serving the army. I mean, even I'm too old. I'm too old. I wish I could also even do something really, but I also heard, I don't know where I read, but it seems like there are also rules that it's advisable for elder men to go, like between like also newly married men within 1 year is not advised to go, isn't it?
Right. So they're exempt from an optional war, meaning if the king of Israel, or let's say Bibi, decides he wants to invade Kuwait because there's good oil over there, he wants to conquer Egypt because I don't know, the pyramids is a great tourist site that could benefit the Israeli economy. That's an optional war. In those wars, you could be exempt from if you just got married and didn't have, if you just got engaged and didn't get married yet, or it's your first year of marriage, right? By the way, even then, there's no exemption for Haredim to not serve, right? Even then, they'd have to participate. If the government decided they're invading, they want to capture Giza and make a resort over there because it's going to be good for the Israeli economy, they have to participate in that war too. Individuals get exempt from the war on basis of, just bought a new piece of land and planted and didn't get to reap it yet, or just built a house and didn't inaugurate it yet. Those are exemptions for individuals, not for entire publics. Answer your question?
I have a question if we're done. Moving on.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Oh.
Can I just finish regarding army?
Oh yeah.
Okay. So I got your point why also Haredim or Jewish people have to serve in the army for protection. But then it's not my words. I heard from someone that just overall the state of Israel is not really just enough. How can I say, it's not really just enough for them to serve. What do you think? What about, is there option for us to strongly implement halakha more over or in a broader sense on the state of Israel?
Yeah, I would start with joining the army. There's a halakha to join the army. One of the reasons
What about, for
countries
example,
are religious
issue
because they're not following some basic halachot, such as serving in the army, such as
what about in case of
how do you
sodomy
call it?
acts?
Conquering and applying our sovereignty to the Temple Mount, such as renewing the practices of the korbanot on the Mikdash. So these people who aren't going to the army because the state isn't religious enough are the ones who are preventing it from being religious enough for them to serve in the army.
Okay.
Serve in the army to be religious.
Okay, can I ask another question?
Yes.
Do you think it's necessary for the government to forbid the gay sex?
To forbid it? That's a whole other topic I'd rather not get into. Maybe we can discuss that sometime.
Sure. Okay, sure. Thank you very much.
This is a demonstration country, right? Demonstration country.
Democratic country.
Democratic country. That's why they can have.
Sami, may I say something too? I just
Please.
want to tell you, because I have to go, I just want to tell you, I second to motion those with the positive answers for bringing this to the class. It clarifies a lot of questions I've been having, because I've heard them fighting this for years, and finally they too have to go.
Generations.
Excuse me?
Generations, millennia. It's been going on forever.
So finally they too have to go and defend Israel. I totally agree. Thank you for bringing that to the class. Thank you very much.
Pleasure. Thank you for agreeing with me.
You're welcome.
Who else
Sami,
wanted to ask a minute ago? Darian?
Yeah. I had so I had a question, just it's a little off topic from the army, but so we were discussing like the Sanhedrin and how they weren't just well versed in Torah, they were also well versed in, I mean, even like the Rambam, they were also very educated on science and whatnot, not just the religious
It's
world.
criteria to be appointed to the Sanhedrin.
Right.
To have a very broad and deep education.
Right.
To know
So
languages, to know sciences, not superficially, to know them well.
right. So if the like these like Haredi communities see the Sanhedrin coming back, you know, Bezrat Hashem, why do they like wouldn't they want to be a part of that? Why would they limit themselves to not really be able to even find a seat there?
I think that's a great question to ask them.
Okay. Good point. Yeah. Just it's interesting because they believe so much. So you would think
what they'll tell you is
Yeah.
that you can learn, so the Torah contains everything, right? So just study Torah and you'll learn everything. I haven't seen any scientific breakthrough ever come from someone who only knows Talmud and doesn't know any science. So show me the Hachamim that weren't scientists who made scientific breakthroughs just from studying Talmud, and then we can have that discussion. Until then, I've seen many scientific breakthroughs. By the way, one of the rabbis in my yeshiva, I went to a yeshiva where the Rosh Yeshiva was the head of the math faculty of the Technion. That's like the MIT of Israel.
Yeah,
He was
yeah.
the chief rabbi there. He taught courses on aerodynamics and on physics. One of his students who became the head, the chief rabbi of the Technion after him, he did his doctorate in physics on quantum mechanics. He addressed the question in quantum mechanics from the guide of the perplexed of the Rambam, right? Something that the Rambam wrote 900 years ago.
Yeah.
He used it as a basis for his theory and his doctorate in physics. So you do have the other way around, where studying science really helps you study Torah.
Right.
But you have to be a scientist in order to really see the scientific pearls hidden within the Torah. Otherwise, you're just going blind and you miss so much.
Right. Because I've heard cases where people who are very about like intellect and whatnot, but not very religious, and they've actually like went so deep into the science that it brought them back to the Torah. So I was just kind of wondering, like your opinion on if that,
Right, absolutely.
like why the Haredis wouldn't do that.
This is hafokba v'hafokba de kulaba. He says study Torah, flip it over and over and over again because everything's contained within it. And it's true. But if you don't have scientific call it training,
Mm-hmm.
you're gonna miss it all. You're not gonna see any of it.
Right. Thank you.
Pleasure.
It might be just a thought in this discussion that it might be what you said earlier about so having an education in a scientific field, it opens your mind.
Sorry,
Your mind.
I didn't catch it. Could you repeat?
Sorry. Having an education in a scientific field, it opens your mind. It makes you think in an abstract way in many different aspects of that abstract idea, which it opens your mind. And if you don't open your mind is closed and you have a problem. It's more difficult to actually use your mind if you haven't pushed and challenged your mind. And that might be why there's a disconnect. And that's what you brought up earlier.
Absolutely.
Sami.
By the way, Professor Uman, he won the Nobel Prize in economics. Take a look at him. He looks like I don't know, like Gandalf, long white beard, right? Really, really religious guy, right? He won the Nobel Prize in economics for game theory. All right, he wrote extensively about game theory, and after that, I listened to a class of his on a sugya in the Talmud, which is very puzzled Chachamim for generations until he introduced game theory. And he explained the sugya through game theory, and all of a sudden it starts to make sense.
It's the same with you had a class a couple of years ago that I listened to where you described the different levels of existence. I think it was 7 levels of existence from the source, which is Hashem.
Right.
And
Yeah.
if you don't know a little bit about another part of physics, which is the different I don't remember the name of it. I've been struggling to remember the name of it, but it's basically different. It's a theory about different levels of also different streams of existence, basically in physics. It's a theoretical theory. But if you know a little bit about this theoretical theory in physics, it was actually quite it was understandable, your class, about the different levels of existence from Hashem and the outpouring of existence from Hashem into the different levels, and then this below the 7th level is our existence.
So there's 2 ways to perceive, to study God's wisdom. There's through the Torah, the words of the Torah, and there's through science. And the more you study each of them, the more you understand the other. So the more you study Torah, the better you can understand science. But if you're studying, you have to be studying science. And the more you study science, the more insights it'll give you back in the Torah. So study both as much as you can. You'll get tremendous insight.
Yeah, I know.
Do you think
I agree.
the current... Sorry.
Yes.
No.
Do you think the current proposals that are in the government for the draft, do you think they're actually going to pass through? Because I know that the Haredi party wants to do more elections again. Does that make sense?
I have no idea. However, I will say one thing about it. One of the things that's threatening to break up the government about is the sanctions to those who don't join the army, right? One of those sanctions is that if you don't join the army, you won't be eligible to get a driving license. Another one is that if you don't join the army, you won't get there's a special discount for buying your first house that's partially like subsidized by the government, right? Now, I think that's very hypocritical if they're saying that they're Shevet Levi and they should be exempt from military service like Shevet Levi, when Shevet Levi doesn't get any portion in the land. So make up your mind. Are you Shevet Levi or not? If you're Shevet Levi, then you shouldn't have any property. You shouldn't own any property in the country. All right. If you want to dedicate yourself to studying Torah and claim that you're Shevet Levi, then you should be in public housing at best. You shouldn't get this discount to begin with. So kind of hypocritical in my opinion.
Makes sense.
Anyone else? Any more questions?
Oh, I have a question. So
Yes.
if Haredi doesn't get any subsidies from government and they just totally annihilate the state of Israel, would you say it's a legitimately being Haredi?
So I don't think the connection is too great. I only heard like partial.
If Haredi who don't serve the army, even they don't get subsidized by the government and just totally annihilate the government, would you say that's a legitimately not serving the army and just living their life on what they believe, in the way they believe?
I'm not sure I understood. I'm not sure I understood the question.
Like I assume, how can I say, this market is they get the benefit from the government as being part
Which
of
benefit?
being in
Benefit
Israel.
of subsidized housing?
Whatever extra they get,
Oh,
either even for the schools.
yeah, they get schools like everyone else, I think.
What do you
I'm
see
not really
about
sure. I'm not really sure.
how do you view those religious people who don't even get subsidized by the government?
Look, the schools are subsidized even though they're not teaching them anything that will make them productive citizens later. Any more questions?
Yes, Sami, I have a question.
Yes, please.
So is this the reason why there's a Haredi Leumi movement? Because they don't want to, they want to be part of the army, but they want to like preserve to be religious. Like, is
Right.
this
So
a reason why?
anyone with Leumi or Tzioni in their title means they're participating. And Haredi Leumi just means because I think Dati Leumi is most of them aren't religious enough. They're a lot more moderate. It just means they're a lot more stringent on the way they follow the Torah. But Leumi means national, or nationalistic.
But do they join the army? These people?
Generally, yes. Yes,
Okay.
they participate.
Okay, thank you.
Sometimes the army doesn't want to recruit them because they could be hardcore, sometimes too hardcore for the army.
Hardcore?
Yeah, like tough. Like they really want to go in and take a gun and shoot everyone in a village or something. Sometimes the army
They want to
suspects
shoot?
that they could be extreme.
Haredi?
Generally
They like
speaking, yeah, they all join. They all join, and they're very good soldiers. They make very good commanders.
you mean they are very brave. They would like to shoot, right?
Yes, yes.
Oh, cool.
No, not that they necessarily are, but sometimes the army thinks of them in that way and holds off on some of them.
I mean they do too much over, right? A little bit over.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Do we have Dati Leumi gender segregated educational organizations? Are
Yeah,
there schools where gender segregated?
sure.
I see. That's great. That's great. I
My,
just
my,
wanted to
my,
bring
bo-
a
my boys
point.
go to all boys schools.
That's amazing. I want to bring a point that in the time of Rambam and many Chazal who studies science, math, physics, pure science, along with Torah study, they were in a time where women were not really going into higher educational
Right.
studies. So I assume for the people who find gender segregation is important, I do see it's quite a fair point that they reject the secular study for that reason. Not it's a different matter of army, but just I wanted the class not to be like a shalom talking bad about them. I know you have a view and our midrash has a view, but I as a convert, I find it's very dangerous for me to be in a place supporting and only for specific group of Jewish people.
Look, I come to teach Torah, to teach halachot. Was the Rambam
Yes, that is
Haredi or
important for us.
Dati or what? He was Jewish. He was a great Talmid Chachamim. All these Chachamim. Could I say Hillel Zaken was a lumberjack, was Dati Leumi or Haredi? They didn't have any of these labels back then. So I'm teaching Torah the way I understood it from the Rambam, the way he understood it from all of these other Chachamim. The question is, what label that people put on themselves today really fits in best with any of this? Some labels don't fit in with it at all. Some of it fit in perfectly. Well, I don't think anyone actually really fits in with perfectly. Even Dati Lomi, I've got things to say about them too. Not as much, but
I see. Sure. Just I personally find it's a very big point because in South Korea, although it's a modern secular country, most of the majority of schools are gender segregated, and it's just very decently modest. And for me, it's also important for me. It doesn't matter it's either Haredi or Dati Lumi. Yes. And back then in the time, it was really decent on the streets. Like it was still family oriented. I think it's a very different atmosphere now for people to join the science to study.
they have, how do you call it? They also have institutions like, for instance, Mikhlala Haredi, right? Haredi College.
You see, that's amazing. I heard there are many more.
There, and it's like an all women's
That's
college.
amazing. Also,
I
like
went to, by the way,
for women.
I went to Machon Lev in Yerushalayim, which is how do you call it? It's an all men's religious college.
That's amazing.
We're in finance and sciences. I think I hear a siren now. So
yes,
Sorry about
yes,
that.
we
I guess we'll finish
Very
here.
much, Sami. Thank you very much. Toda rabba.